So we're still figuring out stuff for the channel. I've been stressing about what to post in my schedule, but for now I'll be trying Why You Wouldn't Survives and Zombie Sins on movies, and we'll see how you like it. Anyways, our last venture into the post-apocalypse of Stray gave us a virus that possibly stemmed from microbacteria made to fight pollution, and today's apocalyptic scenario is not too far from that idea. While immunity in a zombie apocalypse has been veritably a genetic lottery for survivors like those found in Left 4 Dead, Dead Island, 28 Days Later, and more, besides being afforded hereditary resistance via parents, none have really relegated their immunities to race.
These are some racist motherfucking zombies!
And how it turns someone into the generic form of a fast-moving, flesh-craving infected. Today we are discussing the biological representation of this classic commercial. Lysol ain't killing 99.9% of these germs, Red, Not Dead redemption, Washington lost their immunity to the virus when they became commanders, a cultural and philosophical parallel disease, Native Americans make the best zombie killers, and Mother Nature saw you said you have Native American blood in you and said, "We gon' find out real quick," movie itself. Today we are telling you why you wouldn't survive the blood quantum virus. Possibly originating from the Red Crow Indian Reservation, the water supply from the Red Crow River had suddenly become polluted with a highly virile toxin that would infect the waters and its wildlife, causing them to reanimate from the dead and come back as flesh-eating Zeds. Gutted fish would float back to life despite lacking all crucial internal organs. Dogs coming back after being shot by gunfire, humans coming back after car wrecks, and more. Only those who are Native American or of a proportionate Native American descent retain an immunity to what would be called, or at least retroactively by viewers and myself, the blood quantum virus. Now, why does this disease have such a rather sci-fi sounding name? Well, it boils down to a controversial terminology in the blood quantum laws, where someone's heritage and family tree would be factored into a blood quantum, displaying how much of their quantitative genetics owe themselves to a Native American descent. While these laws to discern those of Indian descent were not widespreadly used during atrocities like the Trail of Tears or the Indian Removal Act, the US government had begun to use this law in order to afford Native Americans treaties and sales of land as reparations, although most land would go to the wealthy in corporate interests. Blood quantum would also cause segregation in tribes, with some tribes even refusing to use this method. Kylie Rice even says blood quantum laws will eventually lead to the extinction of indigenous people through intermarriage, and that natives will eventually be defined out of existence, like premeditated erasure by governmental entities, since Native Americans have to continuously prove their identity. Blood quantum has played a veritable serious part in Native American life over the last century, and it's this terminology that creates a linear and appropriate cause to how the virus works. If a person carries within them a decent to mid-level of Native American genetics, then they'll be immune to zombification. But why is that? Why would a virus segregate, considering disease doesn't like to choose favorites unless it's pertaining to a species and not race? Well, in the days of Homo erectus arriving in early Europe, many Europeans died to the early form of the smallpox virus, slowly giving their own bodies a less responsive reaction. With the arrival of Europeans in the Western Hemisphere, Native American populations were exposed to new infectious diseases for which they lacked immunity, the most brutal of which being smallpox. Native Americans had a more aggressive response to the contagion that ravaged their bodies and wiped out 90% of their population in North America, due to probably one of the earliest episodes of biological warfare, where smallpox-ridden blankets were gifted to unwary tribes, on top of brutal colonization campaigns that would leave them further decimated. Considering how catastrophic the virus had ravaged them, it should be no surprise that surviving Native American tribes would carry with them a stronger contagion response to the smallpox mRNA, leaving others susceptible. Smallpox was completely eradicated back in 1980, and it is often feared that due to its purely contained nature and shying away from the human public and population, that someday it could be used as a bioweapon to repeat the sins of the past. While smallpox is a virus that spreads through long-term contact and bodily fluids, making the connection to a virus much more like a typical rabid zombie virus is quite a leap. A quantum leap, you might say. The film, being set in 1981, would be the direct year that followed the complete extermination of the disease, while also being the year the film took inspiration from a real-world event where Quebec provincial police officers raided Listigouche, arresting and beating many of its members and confiscating their fishing equipment, leading to further raids and strife. Now, there is more to the story as well as more on the blood quantum laws, but I don't want to profess knowledge on this too deeply and get important details wrong. It is a bit of a touchy subject, but just know their importance and correlation to the virus today and its probable connection to smallpox and troubled Native American history. With that cultural lesson into blood quantum and smallpox done, what does that mean for you? Well, are you Native American in any sense of the word and genetic blueprint? It's possible either a strain of the smallpox virus used to attack and wipe off the Native American population way back in the day had lied dormant within the Red Crow River over many years, being triggered by man-made pollution entering the river, or a veritable karmic retribution of smallpox being reused as a biological weapon in modern times by terroristic unknown individuals who would splice the dormant smallpox virus with far more infectious and mutated diseases like rabies, tuberculosis, and a lot more, giving it not only waterborne contagions to unleash in large-scale water supplies, but also possibly injecting it into aquatic fish life in order to infect people and the animals and vegetation they eat. While smallpox is known for having symptoms including visible red scars and blisters, the blood quantum virus eliminates this visible visage in favor of paler skin and a more spreadable symptom of vomiting blood, usually turning someone from a healthy survivor to a stark raving undead cannibal anywhere from a few minutes to a little over a day. It can be a little inconsistent, much like the turn times for any zombie apocalypse. Fish have been shown to be the first forms of life the blood quantum virus affected, following into canines and then humans, showing that fish and mammals are completely susceptible to the virus if they eat or drink from these infected sources. So, if you and those around you eat improperly cooked or raw infected meat, drink direct tap water from these resources, or have bodily fluid exposed to you in any way that can enter your body from their saliva to blood, you can be turning rather quickly, at least for most people. Upon the virus's grand unveiling into the general public, day zero of the outbreak will ultimately be the determining factor of whether or not most of us will survive. A majority of people will be unknowingly infected, especially if this biological weapon is widely distributed beyond just a Native American reserve. You've heard me say it before, but if you haven't, people will suddenly and sporadically start going mad, attacking and eating each other, leading to mass hysteria in the streets and countrysides as family and friend alike try to reason and calm down their infected loved ones, while anarchy slowly erodes high-volume areas. You are going to see the true nature of every person around you. You'll have to be lucky enough not to be exposed in any number of ways, as the situation is determined individualistically by the public and local authorities. If you are one to face adversity and chaos well in a sudden panic, you may survive the first few days if you have canned goods, good enough weapons, supplies, and a sense of survival and self-defense. But more important than anything, it's going to be coming down to your genetic makeup and if you are Native American in any reasonably proportionate way. I can already hear a bunch of people coming up in the comments saying, actually, I'm 2.5% Cherokee, 1.5% Navajo, and 6.9% Anglo-Saxon. I know the tribes of Native America. I know I'll be immune to the blood quantum virus.
I thought I was just a standard white guy, but DNA in me showed that I'm actually 4.2% Cherokee Indian. DNA in me showed I was 8% Navajo. Nobody's making fun of me now or my people who are victims.
Listen, your 23andMe and Ancestry.com results aren't going to be working in your favor like you think they will. Most, if not all, immune survivors will have a majority generic shareholding of Native American genetics, while most other people are susceptible to zombification, as currently only 2.09% of the US population is considered Native American, while 4.9% of Canada's population retains that title, and I'm pretty sure those numbers are going to start declining the more you get outside of North America. If you're not in that red minority, you'll be in the dead majority. So let's say you're either Native American descended or you're lucky enough to avoid the virus in every possible regard. What will you be facing in the quantum world? Outside of the post-apocalypse that usually follows in an anarchistic world avoiding the true nature of mankind without law, those infected by the blood quantum virus will become extremely durable brutes, being reminiscent of the fast-moving, completely dead and rotting zombies of the 2004 version of Dawn of the Dead. All internal organs are not vital in any way to survival outside of the brain, retaining the time-honored tradition of only being able to kill them by removing the head or destroying the brain. It also is theorized, but not really shown to too much detail beyond a father that committed suicide in a bathroom and an ambulance driver that died in a car wreck, that all non-Native Americans are already infected by the disease as if it went airborne, and much like the Walking Dead's virus, will bring a dead body back to life no matter the means of death, as long as it's not Native American. The movie didn't spend too much time explaining it, but in order to prevent any incidents from occurring, this means that any and all dead bodies will need to be burned or have their brains destroyed. And purely because of this fact, does this show why the virus would have such a high death toll with a massive amount of confusion in its wake. Think again the Walking Dead virus, but actually as a legitimate threat and not something that could have easily been quelled with just a little bit of confidence. The zombies in Walking Dead were slow, there's no way they could have brought people down, but in here, it's just them but on steroids. Fast-moving, extremely tenacious, voracious man-eaters that can spring up at any moment if any non-Native American, you know what, let's call them NNAs. If any NNAs drink or eat infected sources, get bit, scratched on, spit, vomited, bled on, or just die for any reason in any way that doesn't harm the brain, a sleeper cell of an NNA will come to attack and shred. All zombified quantum virus recipients will also have enhanced strength to rip and tear to disembowel an individual. They will have unlimited stamina and will never give up on their chase unless they are destroyed themselves. Now, as you try and survive with people, you will have to manage finding pure sources of food and water, and as the BQ virus expands its ailment, being able to remain infectious on surfaces for undisclosed periods of time, like blood on blankets and handles, leaving most exteriors needing consistent sanitization efforts, or for survivors to keep protective gear and cleaning efforts on hands at all times, and maybe a little fire and a bit of Lysol to help. If you're not one to wash your hands frequently, you're gonna have to now, as long as the tap water isn't riddled with the virus as well. You might have to find mountain water or natural springs, but you're gonna have to hope no infected animals have drank from that or bathed in it or swam in it. Since it is infectious to all mammals and even to fish, many forms of life would either be rabid and violently ready to sink their teeth into you, or have their meat tainted enough where thorough cooking of their flesh would even be questionable. Fast-traveling land mammals like moose and deer, not caught and bitten, are considered clean meat, making them game for hunting and trapping. But even then, animals infected with the virus will have unending stamina and unnatural speed, and will eventually catch up to these fast-moving land mammals and infect them or rip them apart where they are just not consumable, adding to the rabid and nearly inconsumable population of wildlife. Hell, even rodents would contract the virus and invade safe havens and seek humans to bite and infect at will. All forms of life basically will be out to kill you, and if you kill them, there isn't a guarantee you can use them for food either. Although, of course, if you do have Native American blood, none of that infection stuff pertains to you. You just gotta make sure you're not eating meat that has been rotting out in the sun all day. But you're not gonna be immune from being eaten alive and torn apart by any number of infected animals and people. So try and avoid that, my brothers and sisters. No one is immune to disembowelment. On top of the brutal methods of the infected hosts coming at you from every angle as you struggle to find enough resources just to survive day to day, a bitter reality will also settle in amongst those that still retain the status of living. The fact that only specific types of people will be given amnesty from a deadly pandemic will cause fear and hysteria to break out, like Lysol and his cohorts in the movie acting towards whites and NNAs. Some camps in this specific post-apocalypse apocalypse will see to segregation in either imprisonment to keep the majority of Native Americans safe from violent attacks by the NNA dead, or they'll just resort to immediate execution upon sight of anybody that's not Native American, and it will be deemed necessary for the greater good. You can't have any half measures when it comes to anybody turning into a zombie at any moment. And look, please don't take this as a guarantee that it would occur, or stamping in approval of these actions, or saying Native Americans would do this. It's just how people in general would probably be. The general human population can get dominated by fear so easily, especially with the advent of possibly rabid carriers that could spring forth and harm or kill others at any single moment. Now, some of these Native Americans will take precautions of better safe than sorry to any number of levels, so you'll have to hope those that you survive with will trust you and your genetics enough to weather the seemingly endless pandemic ahead of the population, or to avoid any hunting parties of extremists who are going to be killing anybody not of their creed on sight. So with all that being said, if you're trying to say that you'd survive the blood quantum virus outbreak, well, I mean, there was some repeated points throughout, but bottom line, you'll have to be predominantly Native American by blood, or just be lucky enough not to contract the virus through various means of water, meat, bodily fluids, have the mental fortitude to have to fend off infected friends and family, find a good enough safe haven with clean food and water to live off of for long periods of time, unless you're Native American, be able to avoid being bitten by infected people and animals of varied sizes, thoroughly cook all your meats if you're forced to eat them, sorry vegetarians, surviving ensuing riots and anarchy in the first week of the outbreak, survive in encampments where NNAs could possibly turn if they die of suicide or natural causes, or hide being bitten or infected as they turn and attack you at any time if you're not properly given adequate protected living space and weapons to protect yourself, and hoping immune Native Americans and those with some Native American in their bloodline don't start calling for executions of NNAs to keep themselves and other people safe. If you think you have the genetics and the survival skills, well, may the odds be ever in your favor. If not, you'll just be another giblet pile on the street. Well, that wraps up this native look into the blood quantum virus outbreak. It was a more historical look in the beginning to some of the history of Native Americans, and I'm sure some details are not completely accurate. I did the best I could to research in the middle of doing a bunch of other videos, but I found the concept of the movie Zombie Outbreak completely interesting, even if the execution in the second half left a lot to be desired. Now, is there another movie or franchise you want me to cover on zombie sins or why you wouldn't survive? What about a game that I haven't covered yet? Let me know in the comments. I hope to get the video schedule going faster here soon. Sorry about the frequent dead air on the channel. I'm trying to get back on track. Big shout out to those that support the channel financially on Patreon, as well as those that are YouTube channel members, as you can see right here. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay wow.